Afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Professor Alejandro. This is my colleague, Professor Aleks, and my other colleague, Professor Jonas. We are having today a little statistics class together. In our statistics class, we will discuss diversity. Diversity is defined by Knippenberg and Schippers as a degree to which there are objective or subjective differences among team members. Here you see the headline of a newspaper article criticizing a lack of diversity within tech firms in the Silicon Valley. So nowadays, companies need to be diverse to gain social legitimacy. Additionally, research has shown that diversity can increase creativity and innovation within organizations. So that brings two different incentives for companies, either to be actually diverse or to at least be perceived as diverse. Research by Taifa and Turner had shown that diversity can also come with a loss for the organizations, a loss in teamwork efficiency. So that would explain why some companies may like to be perceived as diverse without actually pursuing it. This raises the idea that maybe the idea of diverse organizations is decoupled from any organizational purpose. Nevertheless, we showed you that there are two different incentives for companies to either be perceived as diverse or to actually be diverse. A possible measure to increase firms' diversity could be to nominate a diverse CEO. So our research question is, does CEO diversity predict employees' diversity? We are well aware that diversity has a lot of different dimensions. For example, age, disabilities, sexuality, educational or professional background. But we only focus on ethnic diversity and gender diversity within our study. Professor Jonas will explain you how we investigate this issue quantitatively.
Yes, thank you, Professor Alejandro. Well, what we first would do is we hypothesize. So what is our expected result and set a hypothesis. We can then define the relevant variables and operationalize them, after which we can formulate a regression model. And then theoretically, we would do data collection and regression analyses, after which we would get results which we could interpret and then either accept or reject the hypothesis. So what do we expect? Well, we expect that CEO diversity represents actual workforce diversity, and therefore we set the following hypothesis. CEO diversity has a positive relationship with workforce diversity. We can now go to the variables, for which we have a dependent variable, which we're trying to predict, workforce diversity, which is measured as a proportion of the actual total workforce. The independent variable is CEO diversity, which is a dummy variable that's coded as 0 for a white male CEO and 1 for a CEO of any other gender or ethnicity. And then finally, we have a control variable, firm size, and firm size alone may already have an influence on the workforce diversity, so it needs to be separated from the error term. And therefore, you add a control variable, firm size, to the regression model. What we also add is an interaction term. But before that, I will talk a little bit about endogeneity. What happens with endogeneity is when the independent variable is correlated with the error term. And this may result in results that look like there is a particular relationship that may be misleading or not actually be true. So what you then do is the following. You add a control variable, like firm size in our case. Now, onto the interaction term, which we also add. This is when the effect of one variable depends on the level of the other variable in the interaction. This sounds a bit vague, but in our case, the effect of CEO diversity on the diversity of the workforce may depend on the total number of employees. So a diverse CEO in a small firm may not represent a diverse workforce, but a diverse CEO in a large firm maybe does. So therefore, an interaction term, CEO diversity times firm size, is added to the regression model. So I will now give the floor to Professor Aleks to talk more on this.
Yeah, so thank you, Professor Jonas. Moving on with the OLS regression model, we theoretically designed it down here, as you can see, and the formula down below looks a bit complicated, but I will explain it to you. So y hat is our dependent variable that we call workforce diversity. Then V0 is our intercept, and V1 is our coefficient for CEO diversity. B2 is our control variable and the firm size that we call firm size, and B3 is our interaction term that Professor Jonas mentioned earlier before, that consists of CEO diversity times firm size. With that being said, we can move on to our sample data and data collection. So we figured out, or we focused on US-based tech companies, and there are 400 public US firms in the tech industry right now. And we will need a sample of around 200 different tech firms that are public to have like a 95% confidence interval. So what we are doing right now is we need data from 3 different sources. The first one being firm size, which takes a look at all the employees that are working in each company as of now. The second one being CEO diversity, that looks at how diverse or how many CEOs that are diverse per our definition are already in this position. And the third one is the workforce diversity, which focuses on the number of, or the level of diversity according to our definition of employees inside the respective companies. Moving on, we come to our limitations. The first limitation is that companies might be unwilling to disclose information, because we assume that if you pretend to be diverse and you have to disclose some information that actually like unveils the truth, or unveils that you are like not as diverse as you are saying, you might not be willing to disclose this. So the second one is, what about double minority groups? We did not take into account that somebody can be female and Hispanic, or female and Asian. So this is something to take a further look into. And the third one is that we have a limited definition of diversity, because we only focused on the ethnic group and the gender, but we did not take into account other dimensions like sexuality or educational background, for instance. So yeah, these are our limitations. Coming to the last slide, here's some food for thoughts. So the first question that we have is, should companies pursue diversity even when it may come with a loss of efficiency? So the second one is, can you think of another control variable that might be important to control for, just to make sure that we have not different lurking variables that we did not take into account yet that might give us wrong correlations. Finally, here's a meme. Enjoy the rest of the day. See you. Bye-bye.